This is Chapter 7, Understanding Interpersonal Communication, and this section focuses on initiating relationships. I'm your instructor, Laura Schaefer. Understanding interpersonal communication. In that process, we have to understand first, how do we initiate relationships? How do we start them? And there's a lot of different reasons why. And we looked at some of the specific theories around attraction and uncertainty reduction theory in the previous lecture. This lecture, we're going to really dive deep into some of the mechanics and questions of not only how people do it, but really how you can do it, hopefully a little bit better. First, initiating relationships is really a numbers game. We are not going to connect with everyone that we meet. And in fact, the odds are that only about 1 in 10 people are someone that we can truly connect with and truly want to connect back with us. So if you're in the room of an average classroom, about 20 to 30 people, there might really only be 2 or 3 people in that entire class that you might be able to have a true relationship, a true connection with. So when we're building relationships, when we're making friends, when we're looking for somebody to date, when we're looking to build people into our network, for our careers, we really have to think a quantity before quality. Because the truth is that we need to expose ourselves to lots of different types of people in order to connect with and initiate those relationships. Only meeting a few people ever isn't necessarily going to get you very far, very quickly. But there's some things we can do to kind of speed that process up. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. First, quickly reviewing, when we initiate relationships, it really has 3 parts to it. One is about who we are naturally attracted to. That attraction drives us to what we call uncertainty reduction. And we try to understand, do this person like me back? Do we have something in common? Are they the type of person that I want to associate myself with? And then the third thing ultimately is compatibility. We have to be compatible with the people that we meet in a way that allows us to have a long-term relationship. So the attraction is physical. Attraction could be sexual. Attraction has a lot to do with our similarities. And attraction has to do with the people that we're close to, like who is in our local community, who is accessible. And with online media, it's maybe who is online, who is in that medium with me. We talked about uncertainty reduction theory having kind of 3 strategies, which are passive, just sitting back, looking around, watching, observing. Active, which is kind of going through a third party, like asking, okay, hey, who do you know? Who should I talk to? What do you think about that person? Does that person like me back? Do they have a crush too? And then the third strategy with it is interactive, where we just directly talk to the person that we want to get to know and that we're interested in. And the last part of sort of kind of firming up who we might actually be able to have a relationship with has a lot to do with compatibility. Compatibility really kind of has 4 main parts. First, personality compatibility. You have to be able to appreciate and to a degree understand each other's personalities. If the personalities clash, it becomes more difficult to sustain a relationship. Interests also play a huge part. Most people, in order to sustain a relationship, have to have some things in common. Now, granted, they don't have to have everything in common. In fact, very few people do. Even like the most successful marriages or longtime best friends, rarely do they have all the same interest. But they probably have at least 1 or 2 very strong interests that they do share and that they are able to enjoy together. The third part with compatibility is conflict styles. There has to be a compatibility with how the 2 people sort of work through hard stuff. If they don't work through hard stuff sort of in an equal way, then that becomes very difficult to sustain the relationship. So if one person's conflict style is to avoid and not to talk about things, and the other person is more assertive and wants to like kind of put it out all on the table and hash it out until you figure it out, those two people are going to have a really hard time working through their problems, because one person's constantly going to be hiding and the other person's going to be chasing. And it's going to become a very difficult kind of relationship to manage when things aren't going well, which happens in every relationship. And then the fourth type of compatibility is lifestyle expectation. We all have certain ideas about what it means to sort of live our best life or live a good life. And when those things are compatible, it makes it really easy to spend time together and enjoy and meet up, go through the same seasons in life. If those lifestyle expectations are too different, it can be very difficult to even find time to spend together, much less sort of appreciate what the other person is doing. If one person likes to spend a lot of money, say, they like to go out to eat all the time, they like to go on trips, but the other person, maybe those aren't things that they want to spend their money on, or maybe they don't have that type of money. That can be a difficult dynamic depending on the level of value that both of those people put on the ability to spend that way matters. And it doesn't have to be compatibility in everything. It just means compatibility in the things that you like to do together. So compatibility can range, but it is an important aspect of being able to build a relationship. So what do you say first when you find someone that you think you could be friends with? You found out that they're probably a good match for you, maybe through some asking other people, uncertainty reduction. So what do you say first? Well, truth is, for almost every type of relationship that we're going to start, we need some kind of pickup line. Now, when it comes to romantic relationships, having a pickup line might be funny, or it might be more commonly known. But even making friends or initiating business relationships or approaching someone to be your mentor, you need some sort of intro, if you will, aka a pickup line, in order to sort of initiate the relationship and gain the other person's interest. So how do we know if someone else is maybe interested in us? If we're observing, we're sort of watching, how do we know? When it comes to flirting, I think that's kind of the easiest way to think about this, but it really applies to all types of relationships that we engage in. The first one is glances. Is the other person looking at us? Are they making eye contact in some form that lets them know that hey, I recognize you, even if it's from across the room, like, hey, you seem kind of interested. Glances are very powerful. One thing that's really interesting is that it takes multiple glances for another person to know that we're interested in them, because we tend to hide it. Our desire to minimize our risk for rejection causes us to actually minimize our interest or desire to meet another person. So they've done some studies, and it can take an average of 13 glances from a woman to a man for the man to kind of get the clue that she's interested. So guys, if she looks at you more than 2 times, she might want you to come over and say hi. Even if she's giggling, she's probably not making fun of you. The giggling or, smiles, even eye rolls might just be her trying to, in a sense, hide and kind of mute some of her interest. So don't take it off as maybe that she's kind of looking at you and maybe making fun, but that she's like being kind of playful, really. So the glances are definitely a part of it. Smiles, if someone smiles at you, it's easy to meet a friend when you're at somewhere and you see something happen and you both smile at each other because you think the same thing is funny. That could be for friendships, it could be for romantic relationships, it could be for even business relationships. Body orientation is another one. When someone turns their body, whether that's their legs, their hips, or their shoulders, even their head, toward you, that's some sort of sign that, hey, they're interested. They're trying to gain they're trying to observe me better, and they want me to see them better. So that's body orientation. There's three more that we'll dive into on a deeper level, which is highlighting, asking good questions, and then expressing like. So once we see that someone, like, they're making eye contact, maybe they've smiled at us in some form, they've kind of turned their body to sort of show like, hey, why don't you come over here and talk to me? Then we can sort of ask some questions or introduce ourselves. So we'll look at that part here now. Highlighting is a very useful and effective technique or tool to use in connecting with people. And basically, what you're doing is you're highlighting something that you have in common. Remember, most people feel more comfortable with somebody that they have something in common with. So the quicker that you can highlight something when meeting someone, the quicker, the sooner you'll have a chance to kind of make a successful connection. So what are some different things that you can highlight? Are you eating and drinking the same thing? This is a very easy way to approach. If you're at a party, are you grabbing the same drink? If you're out to eat or at a mixer, did you grab the same appetizer? It doesn't have to be anything significant, just enough to be like, oh, you liked the shrimp scampi. Me too. That in itself is just the right way to start a relationship on something that's mutually appreciated. Other questions you can ask yourself are, do you share a common friend? You're like, hey, I know that you're friends with Scott. I am too. How did you get to know Scott? And that's a perfect question. You can both share your stories about how you met Scott and how you got to know each other. I'm sure there's probably a funny story in there too. And before you know it, you're already talking. You don't have to talk about yourself yet. You're talking about this third person that you both like and have in common. And you're sort of building up that, hey, me too type of reinforcement, the highlighting. You can also talk about maybe the same sports team or hobby. Many people wear shirts or pens or hats. They might even have a patch on a bag or something along those lines that indicates maybe where they went to college or their favorite football team, or, maybe they have a pair of, crocheting needles in their purse. And you can just pick up on the cue and be like, oh my gosh, I see your crocheting needles. Are you, do you crochet too? And then you can kind of have that conversation. Once you find the thing to highlight, don't just mention it once and then move on. Like, you've struck gold. Stay there, double down on it. Ask a couple more questions. How did you get into it? What was your favorite moment? Ask a couple questions to get the conversation going, and then kind of take it from there. And of course, don't ever be afraid to give the high five, especially if it's something that you're both really excited about. Maybe it's a sports team. Maybe your team just won. Be like, yeah, throw up the high five. Very few people will literally leave you hanging. And then it also, that physical connection, even if it's quick, just gives you one more point of connection. One thing we must note when we're talking about highlighting and meeting new people is that at first it has to be authentic and real. If it's not, people pick up on that really quick. If someone has low self-esteem, maybe they have some form of self-hatred, or if they're just trying to suck up, people really pick up on that. And it almost feels like some level of deceit if you try to highlight something that's not true to yourself. I made this mistake once with one of my first bosses. I had recently gotten into eating a healthier lifestyle, and she was like a committed vegetarian, and I was like, oh yeah, I've really started making some steps and improvements in my diet. And so my boss thought this was really cool, and so within the first couple of weeks that we met, I started working for her. She took me out to lunch. And so we started talking about what we eat. And the she took us to a Cracker Barrel and she bought like the whole vegetarian side plate. Well, I took the advantage because I never go to Cracker Barrel at that time to get chicken fried steak. And at that moment, on our way home, she was like, you say you really like nutrition and stuff, but why did you order the chicken fried steak? Like, that's the worst thing on the menu you could eat. And then I realized how much more seriously she was taking her diet than I did. And I think she felt like, in a sense, I was sucking up. It was not really my intent, but that's how it came across. It wasn't as genuine or necessarily as real as the level that she had initially thought my interest in that was. And so we laugh about it. We laughed about it later, but in that moment, she really felt like I was just sucking up to her, which it wasn't really my thought process, but I can see how that can come across that way. So it has to be authentic. It has to be real. And, once you've made the initial connection through highlighting something, you want to kind of keep that conversation going, right? In the highlighting, you've really kind of engaged in maybe the first 2 minutes, 5 minutes of a conversation. If you really like this person and you feel some sort of connection, you want to keep that going, right? You want to get that initial relational investment up front. So how do you move from like hey, we have something in common to digging a little bit deeper and making a stronger connection with the person? And simply, the way to do that is to ask good questions. Before we say what are good questions, let's look at what are some bad questions. Hey, what's up? What do you do? Where do you live? Where are you from? What's your major? Now, these questions aren't necessarily bad, but they only give room for like one-word answers. Questions that are sort of close-end, like yes, no, where are you from? I'm from Dallas, Texas. What's my major? Communication, right? Like you say one thing and that's kind of it. There's nothing to follow. You're learning information, but you're not connecting with the person. So what are the types of questions that helps you learn not only about someone, but help you understand their personality and their motivations? Asking good questions is a good part of it. So here's some good questions to ask. What projects are you most excited about? If you're in college, you might have some class projects that you're excited about. Certainly, you've probably got some projects that you're not excited about and are overloaded. Be careful about overmoaning those. That's kind of one thing that we all have in common. School load, workload is hard, but it's not necessarily very exciting. And it's definitely not very positive most of the time. So answer about like, what are you actually excited about getting to do? Other questions are, what's coming up for you that's most exciting? This is not about projects. It's just about your life in general. And this is interesting because people can talk about anything they're excited about. And people love talking, for the most part, about what they're very excited about. As you learn information from them, you can ask them, hey, what's the most significant thing you've learned from that or from this person? And they can, these are like deeper and more thinking, and you kind of understand like what is sort of motivating and driving the person that you're talking to. Other questions are, what are you most looking forward to in the season? What are you most looking forward to in the fall, the summer, the winter? If they've told you about a project or something that they're wanting to achieve, you could ask them like, what would make that a success for you? Some people may not have even thought of the answer. And it's really intriguing. If you can ask a question like that, people see you as positive. They see you as charismatic. They see you as someone that is actually taking not just like, oh, they want to know my biography, but they actually want to know what's important to me. And them asking these questions is actually helping me become more clear about what it is that I want. Another question could be, of course, like, what kind of holiday traditions do you like for blank? At the time of this recording, Halloween is coming up. What's your favorite traditions for Halloween? How do you celebrate Christmas? What about Hanukkah? Thanksgiving? What kind of things do you like to do for New Year's? You don't have to ask them out for any of those holidays, but you are sort of finding out, like, what are the kind of things that they like to do? Do they like to stay home? Do they like to go out? Do they like to dress up? Do they like to be around a lot of people? Are they sentimental? Are they sort of like to do things their own way? You're going to pick up on that simply from a question about holiday traditions that they like. Finally, the last part of initiating relationships is expressing like. At some point in your conversation, you have to sort of indicate to the person that you've enjoyed your conversation and that you would like to have some kind of interaction again, right? You want to hang out with them again or talk again. So how do you express like? There's a couple different ways to do that. And so I'm going to show you 3 ways of doing it. The first one is a kind of a game called Something Old, Something New. And it's inviting others to connect with you at a later time. So you could choose from one of 2 things. Something old, which is maybe something that you've always done that you can ask that person to do. So if you like to bake and you always make these amazing chocolate chip cookies, you could say, hey, do you want to come over on Saturday and we can bake cookies together? Or if, you'd like to go off-roading, you can go, hey, I've always done this. Do you want to go with me? I'm going to go off-roading in my Jeep Wrangler, or whatever your interest is. I've always done this. Would you want to come along with me? That's something old. And then something new is, hey, there's this new movie coming out. I want to go see it. You want to go with me? Or, they opened up this new bowling alley arcade in town. I haven't been yet. Do you want to go check it out? Or they're having a tattoo conference, and do you want to go and check it out? And maybe we, go find our favorite artist. Whatever it is that you're into, that you're either inviting them to something that you've always done, including them, or you're inviting them to say, hey, we found something we've always wanted to do. Let's go do it together, and giving a chance to do that. So that's something old, something new. The second one is giving a compliment. Now there's 2 pieces with compliments that we have to do, right? Because compliments could come across as either being superficial or as a form of flattery. And while most people appreciate a little bit of flattery, right? Again, back to, it has to be authentic and it has to be real. So how do you make a compliment that is real and also not creepy, right? Because it can go either way. One, keep compliments to someone's identity, so what does that mean? Say, not just like, oh, hey, you did really good work on that. Change the wording to, I can tell you're the type of person that really cares about the projects you take on, right? Same thing, but the way that you say it really speaks to who they are as a person, not just what they are able to do. And it makes a huge difference. Expressing gratitude is also a key part in this. It's like, thank you so much for sharing, your story about what you've been working on with me. I've really learned a lot. Like, tell them a genuine compliment. Thank you so much for sharing about, your holiday. I'm not from that same faith, and I've never really understood that. And I get a better idea about what that means now. Thank you, right? Deep gratitude from a conversation. And then the third one is expressing your emotions. You straight up tell someone, I like you. And it doesn't have to be like, hey, I like you. It can just simply be like, oh my gosh, I've really liked talking with you. We should do this again, right? Keep it light, keep it lighthearted. But let the other person know, like, hey, I think this could work. When you're expressing like, you can also express dislike. So saying things like, yeah, I'm not really interested in that, or this isn't a good time for me, or I need a break, right? Being able to express like and dislike are equally important. As you've been talking about something, you might even be able to say, I'm really excited about this. Like, can we get together and maybe talk about this more, or go do this thing, right? So let people know that what like indicate to people, like, do you like what you've gotten or do you not like it? Because remember, all of us are driven to reduce uncertainty. So even if we tell somebody, yeah, you know what, now's not the right time. Some of us, that can be a more difficult thing to say, but we're also sort of giving a gift to the person and reducing their uncertainty. Otherwise, walking away from the relationship, like, it was a really great conversation, but I've never heard back from the person. And they don't know why. Do they not like me? Did I have my breath smell? Maybe they had some things going on. Like, right, there's so many reasons that this person didn't reconnect with me. On the other side of that, also be careful about promising to meet up with people or to go out or to do this or text later when you really have no intention of doing this. There's some really, really lazy habits that we have as a society around telling people that we'll call later, or, hey, we need to get together and do coffee, or, hey, we really should go work out together. But then we never do those things. And on one hand, many times we expect that. And we understand it. But on the other hand, it really undermines people's own integrity and really kind of damages our ability to trust other people. So I challenge you, be very clear when you're talking to people about what your expectations are for the relationship. Sometimes it was like, you know what? It was great to talk to you. I'll see you again. That's fine. Especially, that's actually perfect especially if we don't expect to have another interaction with them intentionally, or we know that we'll probably only interact with them whenever we see them at random again. But we don't have any intention on initiating anything with them. So be clear. It doesn't have to be explicit and harsh, but be clear. Don't ghost on people. Don't offer hope to people when you don't intend on following that up. And do express when you like someone, let them know. I know it can be a little makes you nervous. And of course, being too strong about it can kind of come off as too strong, maybe creepy, but just sort of indicate hey, yeah, I like this. I hope you do too. And that's going to really kind of that's going to raise your game up as far as making connections with people and initiating relationships, and will probably serve to sort of increase your social circle. And so remember, it's a numbers game. You can go places where there's more likely to be more people that you're interested in. If you have a hobby around football, going to watch football with other people that love football, that's a really great way to increase your odds. But on average, going into a place where you don't know anybody, the odds is 1 to 2 people might be really a true connection. So don't be afraid to talk to people and ask people who might be interesting for you to contact, who you should meet. Use your friends around you. They know you. They can help you find people that you might connect with better. So there's lots of different strategies and lots of different techniques for connecting with people, for friendships, for romantic relationships, for work relationships, and any other type of relationship you might want to initiate.